You're listening to The Parenting Space, a podcast brought to you by parents and practitioners from the South London and Maudsley NHS Foundation Trust. A podcast where you can hear us discuss and debate issues around parenting and mental well-being. Hello and welcome back to another episode of The Parenting Space. And today I'm joined by Lorraine. Lorraine, would you be able to introduce yourself?
Yes, so my name is Lorraine. I'm a mother. I have 3 children I gave birth to and 2 stepchildren, and I've got 4 beautiful grandchildren. I'm an early years practitioner. I'm a women's self-defense coach, and I'm also a parenting facilitator, and I deliver parenting programs.
So Lorraine, it sounds like you have not only your hands full, but also lots of wonderful experience that we could draw on today as we talk about child-led play.
Oh, yes.
What do you understand it to mean?
With child-led play, there are some main characteristics. So, for example, it's a play where you would let the child choose. The child is in control of that whole play. You're literally following their lead. You would want to plan it. So you'd say, okay, well, we're going to do this child-led play, say, for 20 minutes. You're preparing it. Use a timer. We don't want no disruptions from this play. So therefore, parent hasn't got the telly on, parent won't have their phone. It's just the focus of the child. The idea is not to ask questions or correct them. You're not involving yourself unless they're inviting you to play. They might say, oh, help me put the bricks on. So that's really how child-led play looks.
Okay, interesting. With what you're describing there is a whole host of things to think about. So I wanted to break that down a little bit. So I think the first really helpful thing that you raised there was this is something that's led by the child. So are you saying that the activity that you decide to do is the child's choice?
Absolutely. The child's choice. The child chooses it. And that's why sometimes I was saying, you can give them a choice of either, playing with paint or doing puzzles, for example. Okay,
so it doesn't need to be completely open-ended. No. You can give them options, which they choose from, so they've still got that element of control.
Alternatively, it could be the fact that they just want to play with their cars or their bricks and they want you to be involved. That you can then turn that into a child-led play.
That's really helpful to know, actually, because I think there'll be many parents thinking, well, if I asked my child what they wanted to do today, they'd say, I want to go to Legoland. And that just might not be feasible or realistic. No. So you can put kind of limits around it, but still giving them this sense of autonomy and control.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, there's no questions asked except for, descriptive commenting. So,
I want to have a think about this with you. Okay, so when you say no questions asked, what do you mean by that?
Well, I think parents, grown-ups can, be sitting there with a play and, the children are playing. And for example, they're using their imagination. Mm-hmm. So this brick, for example, becomes an aeroplane, and it's as simple as that. Why are you using it? That's a brick. That's not an aeroplane. Just describe what they're doing. Just, oh, wow, yeah, you've got an aeroplane. Just repeat what they're saying. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter it's not an aeroplane. It doesn't matter if it's not blue. It doesn't matter if it's pink. Just go along with that child. Get into that child's world. You'll find out so much more about that child, and that child will then, be able to express so much more to you.
Well, I think that's interesting also, because I think there's always the temptation as a parent to use that moment of one-to-one time to do a bit of teaching, perhaps. And I think that's where questions come in, well, and what happens if you mix that with that? And if you were to add that to that, what would you get? There's that temptation just to do a little bit of teaching.
Of course. I think that's why we want to separate the child-led play. Like I said before as well, it's for a limited time. So even if you've got a timer there, 10 minutes, and you say to your child, okay, for the next 10 minutes, we're just going to play, with whatever they've chosen. There's going to be no interruptions. I'm not going to have the phone. I'm not going to have the TV.
Okay. So limiting that time, no questions in that 10 minutes. Yeah. You can ask questions outside. We can do teaching and learning outside.
It's different from other play. Absolutely.
It's different. I get
different from other play and other teaching,
Okay.
And it's about just setting up the rules as well beforehand. So, we've got the timer here. We're going to have play for 10 minutes. Once we finish that, I've got to get on with this, blah, blah. And, let them see the timer, let them know the countdown.
I think that can be really helpful for some children, can't it?
Yeah.
Because I think endings or bringing that type of play to an end can be tough.
And even if you haven't got anything visual, it's easy to say, we've got 2 more minutes of our, special time.
Mm-hmm.
It's about letting the child know. That child will feel so special after, that moment. They've just had your undivided attention. You haven't interrupted their play. You haven't interrupted their imaginations. You've just been there. If they want you to play, they'll encourage you to join in. It can lead to so much more.
Are you saying that it's really up to the child whether the parent even joins in the play? Okay. And so it's very possible that some children won't draw their parent in. No, they'll kind of want to be doing their own thing. So what's the role of the parent there? What are they there to do?
Just to sit, just to observe and, like I said, descriptive comment.
Okay. Can you give us an example?
So again, like I was saying, for example, if a child, they're building the bricks and they've got the red brick and they're putting it onto the yellow. If they're not talking about colour yourself, then you can just say, you've put the red brick on the yellow brick. You stood the person on top, whether it's a figure, whatever. You're literally describing what they're doing. If they're drawing, I can see you're making big round circles. And look at those lines. So you're literally describing what they're doing. You're not adding anything to it. You're not adding what you think it is. You're literally verbalising.
You're just describing. And I think that sounds so simple, doesn't it? But it also probably isn't what we're naturally inclined to do, because I'm sitting here thinking, I would just want to say, why are you putting the red brick on the blue brick?
Of course.
Probably just to make conversation and understand the child better. But I can see how that's then taxing on the child and it becomes a different type of conversation. It's inquisitive. It's needing something of them.
Of course. Sorry. If a child's in their own world and their imagination is just flowing, why would we interrupt that?
Right.
Why can't we be part of that?
And I can see how that's a very different experience for the child. And what do you sort of think are the benefits of doing this type of child-led play then?
There's a nice connection between the parent and child. The child is able to express their feelings through play. It can help towards behaviour. The main thing as well is the bonding of the relationship as they grow up. It continues. Children feel comfortable to be able to come to you and approach you on other matters.
It also just makes me think of the number of times we see a child playing really nicely on their own and we think to ourselves, great, let's leave them to it. There's a great opportunity to go do something else. But actually maybe from time to time, that's also a wonderful opportunity to come and sit and observe and describe and let that child feel really acknowledged and attended to. And I think, that bit of that 10 minutes of high quality attention will be more powerful than the 30 minutes of sort of interrupted questions, half, I call that sort of 50% attention, where you're cooking something whilst half responding to your child.
Yeah.
It's a very different experience for them, isn't it?
It is. And it's also a nice experience for the parent, the grown-up,
Absolutely. Something different to try. Sounds simple, sounds obvious, but actually maybe not quite what we're used to doing. So thank you for sharing that with us today. Thank you for coming on the podcast and talking to us about it. And we hope to have you back. You've been listening to The Parenting Space, a podcast brought to you by the CAMHS team at South London and Maudsley NHS Foundation Trust. If you need support after today's discussion in the podcast, please talk to someone that you trust, or follow the links in the description to get general advice and support. The Parenting Space is available on all podcast platforms. If you'd like to hear more discussions like this, subscribe to our channel and you'll receive a notification every time we release a new episode. If you've enjoyed listening to this episode, let us know your thoughts over on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube. You can find us at theparentingspace_official.